Gems are one of the most important resources in Rise of Kingdoms. Gems can either put you severely ahead of the curve, or dig yourself a major hole, depending on how you use them. In today's video, we're going to cover how to build up gems, what events are best to spend your gems on and how to spend them, and how to plan accordingly to set yourself up for success of gem spending events. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk about how to get more gems. First, of course, is through regular events. Arc and KvK are probably the most popular, with Arc giving you the most consistent among events for winning, as the victory rewards are fairly significant, and the lost rewards are still also significant as well, with you getting 2,000 or 1,000 gems. And you can do this every 2 weeks, and that's what makes it such a consistent source of income. But of course you also have KvK, and you have some other alternative options as well. First, if you have maximum tech in buildings, you'll have some regular events that are automatically collectible when the events start for upgrading technology and upgrading buildings. These are the events without individual rewards and are only up for a day or so, but are based on basically reaching building or tech increases during those time periods. And that can get you up to 1,300 gems each time they come up. This can build up to tens of thousands of gems over a few months, so it's well worth the investment if you get them maxed out, and it benefits you as a player already to have them maxed out as well. Alternatively, for persistent players, looking for gem nodes is also an option, and can be collected every 30 minutes to an hour depending on the size of the node, so you can have more frequent dispatches than regular gathering nodes, and are better suited to players who are active and online more often as a result. Lastly, of course, barbarians and marauders are a very significant source of gems, although they are relatively AP intensive when you want to get large amounts of gems. So really your daily income is going to be very small from this. But it is a very solid option, and if you are pushing honor or you're doing pre-KvK, it's also a good way to build up some additional gems if you need to. There are some other minor sources, but most of the time your gem income is going to be from either spending, which I know a lot of players don't do, but that still works. It'll be from events like Arc of Osiris and the regular events like that, or from gathering notes. Next, we'll go over events that use gem spending. And that really starts and ends with More Than Gems. More Than Gems is the premier gem spending event. Over 2 days, you can earn up to 26 legendary heads, which is more than basically any other event with the exception of a few seasonal events in the Mightiest Governor. To get these heads, however, you have to spend gems. The event resets every day, and you have 2 runs at the rewards as a result. 7,000 gems spent within a day will get you 5 gold heads, and 25,000 will net you another 8 for a total of 13 per day. This means you can max out at 26 gold heads for 50,000 gems spent in 2 days. You can spend gems on arrows, books, VIP shop, Sage's testimony, equipment materials, anything that counts as gem spending, including leveling up your Lucerne scrolls or your KvK equivalent, or buying hammers for your Hunt for History event to save for later. This means that you could pay for your future needs during More Than Gems. And even if you need them right now, you'll get bonuses, and this is essential for free-to-play players, because getting ahead and getting those free items are completely worthwhile. If you are spending gems, I recommend spending at least 14,000 gems over the event, 7,000 each day. This will net you 10 gold heads at 1,400 gems spent per head on top of whatever you're buying with the gems. If you go to 25,000, you get 13 at just shy of 2,000 gems per head, which is still okay, but you just don't have as much value. So if you don't have enough to do that on both days, you're better off spending the 7,000 gems each day and just save up for the next event. After all, we still have several more events to cover yet that you're going to want to spend gems on. For new players before max buildings, I recommend spending your gems on blueprints first, then books for your castle, and then lastly on arrows. Of those 3 items, blueprints have to be bought to max out all your buildings, and you can't earn them any other way. Books can be earned, but are hardest to earn, and arrows are typically the easiest to get. So following that priority will ease the bottleneck of building upgrades. For players who are building full but do not have T5 yet, I recommend stocking up on speed ups, followed by equipment materials, and then lastly hammers for your hunt for history if the event overlaps. Speed ups are always needed, and the heftier you have of a stock, the better chance you have to do well once you're fighting in KvK. Similarly, equipment materials are must-haves to upgrade your arsenal of gear, but you have to earn a higher portion of what you need to than speed ups, and you always need speed ups even with full gear. So even then, you can dismantle your purple equipment and get their costs, so you don't really need to stock them up as much as you do with speed ups. And lastly, with the hammers, the event doesn't always overlap, but it does give a good value if you can double dip. Lastly, for T5 players, I recommend a combination of equipment, speed ups, and hammers like I said above, but also the defense boosts that you can find in your regular shop. I'm going to pull that up right here, and what you'll see is, even though you had the regular items, you also have some additional things you can get with your equipment. So when you go to the boost section, you have your attack and defense boosts, which are 5% as you can see. But then if you go to your VIP shop and go into your boosts, you also have a purple one here that's 10% instead of 5. This doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a bunch of additional value that is really underrated. So especially if you're a Garrison or Rally player, having this is really useful, and you can get 4 of them for essentially 6,000 and then buy something else, or get 5 for 7,500, get your 5 gold heads and move along, and then you're set for the next couple of fights because these go for 24 hours. Lastly, let's go over the stay clear items. These items you should generally avoid just due to the fact that they're poor value. First, of course, I did mention Lucerne Scroll levels, but the purchasing levels is very pricey, and as you can tell, it gets very out of hand very quickly. So it's not nearly as good a value as buying literally anything else. Unless you need the item on that specific next tier for the next fight, move along. It's not worth it. Next are the legendary heads. This is one that's probably going to be a little more controversial, as I've had to buy them before too, but generally speaking, when you go to the bottom of the VIP shop, 2,000 gems per head is a hefty price if you're not getting anything else out of it. So unless you have a real reason to buy them, i.e. you're short 5-10 heads from getting a commander expertise before a fight, I would really just wait, because even at lower VIP levels, it's just a couple extra days. If you don't need them for a specific fight, it's just better off to buy other items that are going to affect you better in the immediate future, like resources or speed ups or equipment materials that are going to set you up better in the long run. Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing you could do to build up your legendary sculpture collection is just waiting and spending time. Well, now that we're in the VIP shop talking about more than gems, let's talk about the VIP shop. The VIP shop is a discounted item shop that resets once a week. At any level, you should be checking this weekly because the reset items at the top should be sold out for you every single time, as they're just bought with resources. But you also have some additional value you can get from some of these items. This is mostly done alongside more than gems when you are trying to spend those 7,000 gems, but it all should be your first stop if you need items in general. The first thing you'll notice is that successive tiers of the same kind of item have a better value. For example, this 1 hour speed up costs 50 gems for 1 hour, whereas the 8 hour speed up costs 240 for 8. This means that you get the 8 hours for about 30 gems an hour. And inversely, the 5 minute speed up, which is a 1/12 of an hour, is 6, so you get 72 gems for an hour speed up. So the higher denomination you buy, the better value you tend to get. This is a trend that's helpful to remember when you're spending gems, as you can get better value, and for every 1,000 gems you spend, you're just going to get more and more value. So as long as you have a task that requires at least that much time to complete, you should buy the highest denomination of the amount of gems you're willing to spend. For example, if I'm going to spend 1,000 gems on speed ups, and I only have 16 hours, I would just buy 2 of the 8 hours instead of scrolling down and buying the 24 hour. because it would just waste those additional 120 gems. So that's something that's important to remember as well as you go along, especially for more than gems, because you want to get as much value as you can. I covered this briefly earlier as well, but the VIP shop is not the only way to buy items. So when we're in the VIP shop, if we instead click the shopping cart here, you'll see that you have some other items that you can also buy. Among them, Peace Shields, this defense buff that we talked about. You should try to compare these items to the VIP shop items to get a better idea of what kind of value you're getting. So for example, if I buy a 8-hour speed up here, it's 600 gems. Whereas, like I said, in this, it's 240. So the amount I saved was the equivalent if I bought it from the VIP shop of it being a 24-hour if I buy it just from this shop. So if you don't need it immediately and your VIP shop is sold out, it's oftentimes just better off to wait because a discount percentage is shown off the shop and you can see you get a lot better value if you just wait a little bit. And the price gap can become much, much larger, so that's something to consider as well. Next, let's talk seasonal events. For this section, we'll talk about the 7K tree event and the seasonal shop events. The 7K gem tree event is where you spend 7,000 gems in that middle path to unlock a second path that has additional rewards, namely more gold heads, but also some more gems. What's important to remember with that event specifically is that the gems you get for completing all 25 levels will replace the gems you spend to unlock the path, meaning that you get a full refund of those 7,000 gems and some additional free items. However, you have to complete it for it to work fully. Otherwise, you don't get all your gems back, and you'll still get good value as long as you get into the 20s and levels, but it doesn't then become totally free and refunded. This often means you have to spend a ton of AP to complete, but it's generally worthwhile to try to have it if you have time to complete it, because you get a ton of legendary sculptures, and you essentially get all that stuff back, plus the gems generated from defeating barbarians and gathering. Next is the seasonal shop. This is similarly a event where you can earn some items for free from barbarians, gathering, and whatnot, and then you have to spend 50 gems to get a second item. Then there's a shop with all sorts of items, city themes, gold heads, or whatever else you might be able to buy for that event specifically. Those can be bought with both the free items and the gem items combined. In this event, you can get a legendary sculpture for 1,000 gems, which is 20 of these gem items at 50 gems each. This is one of the lowest costs in the game for gold heads, so you can definitely get great value on this if you spend the gems. However, unlike the 7K gem tree event, you don't get the gems back themselves, so they're gone permanently. So just potentially from the tasks you have to do, you just end up spending more gems and you're lower overall at the end of the event than you are at the start. This also works with equipment materials too, which you could buy in those events. But that is very similarly like you get better value than the VIP shop, but you have to be able to weigh it with the gem costs, which you're not going to be getting back. So overall with those, I recommend you waiting to spend the gems till you have enough of the free items to buy the thing you want to buy with the gem items. Lest you fall short, let's say you fall asleep right before reset and don't get enough of the items, and now you're stuck with 20 these items that you spent 1,000 gems on and nothing that you really want to buy with. So just be aware of that and just be cognizant of that as you're doing this event, because it's something that can be a pitfall for players who are trying to get set up all immediately but don't end up reaching what they need to reach at the end. Next, we're on to the wheel. The wheel might be my favorite event in the game, as it gives so much potential and guaranteed reward tiers, and just enough that it's more than you could ever ask for. I won't go super long into this event here as it takes quite some time, and I did make a full video on the wheel that I will link in the description if you want to look into that specifically. For the wheel, I'll just remember to go for tier levels and stop at those tiers, 10, 25, 45, and so on, and don't stop in between those reward chests to maximize your rewards. Also remember you have 6 spins for 1,200 gems over the 3 days, 1 free and 1 400 gem spin each day. So factor that into how many times 5 spins you actually need to do to reach a tier. Lastly, avoid the 800 gem spins as much as possible, as they're much poorer value than the 640 per spin you get on the times 5 uses. Now we're on to the Courier Station, which pops up with deals a few times a day. This shop can have great or awful gem values. So you need to be careful. As a general rule, check the value of speed-ups or resources in gems per hour or resources given per gem, and compare it to the best VIP shop item you have for speed-ups. If the VIP shop item is better, don't buy the Courier Station one, period. If the Courier Station one is better, buy it if you need it, but you don't have to reach for it. The logic here is that the VIP shop is available all the time, and is better value. So there's no reason to spend gems on the Courier item unless the Courier item is a better value and you need it, or you are out of the VIP shop item. The items you could buy with resources instead of gems, I highly recommend you buying for whatever you can, as long as you can stock, because you can stock up on more resources a lot more easily than you can more gems. Lastly, when you're comparing them, if you want to do this quickly, like I said, the easiest way to do it is to convert it to a common thing. For example, the 6-hour speed up comes out to about 48 gems per hour. And if I go to the VIP shop, I could see that the hour is 50 gems per hour, sure. But then when you go to the 8-hour speed up, you're talking about 30 gems an hour. And then the VIP shop item's already at better value, so you're better off buying this one outright. Next, we're on to the Hunt for History and Egg events. Both of these are equipment blueprint events, and the most consistent way to get set piece legendary blueprints. For the Hunt for History event, it is a search event where you have 26 different tiles, so then the maximum you can use to clear a floor is 26, with the next floor being unlocked when you find the floor-specific item you choose at the top of the screen. For this, it means the maximum hammers per floor is 26, and you should always shoot for fully completing an increment of 5 floors. You want to end by completing the 5th, 10th, 15th, or so on, versus stopping on 6, 8, 12, or whatever other floor, because that's where you get the best value in those legendary blueprints. And your gems should only be used in regard to getting to those tiers when possible. So you should try to plan ahead when you can, and you could buy some hammers with gems, and they do carry over. So if you end up overbuying, it's not the end of the world. But you can buy several for each event and then save them for months even, and use them all in one on a later Hunt for History event to go to the 15th or the 20th or the 25th floor. For non-spenders, I very much recommend doing this, as it's hard to get the 5 levels each time without spending gems or spending money, and without saving from the prior event. But overall, you should try to line this up with more than gems if you can help it. If it lines up, it is super ideal to spend those 200 gems per hammer and save up for a future event, even if you're not going to complete the event this time, because you'll get a lot of additional value. And legendary blueprints between the expertising and now the iconicing with blueprints, you're going to need plenty. And you do get a bunch of extra value, and you should avoid spending super heavily outside of those events on this unless you have a bunch of areas already secured, i.e. your commanders are good, your armaments and formations are good, you have a good situation in speed ups, because you don't want to sink all your gems into just this event and then you have a shortcoming somewhere else. Next is the Egg event, which is essentially the wheel but for equipment blueprints. It is a better event for material consistency, as you get the guaranteed blueprints at certain tiers like you do with the Hunt for History, but they're a lot more achievable through spins. But it does only last 2 days instead of the wheel's 3, so you'll have less time to spend gems and have fewer free spins to use. For this, like the wheel, I recommend you stopping at reward tiers when possible and using the free and discounted spins every day to your advantage. But if you have those 4 and you're doing the ×5 spins, using a ×1 spin at full value is less detrimental, because then you get the 5th roundup, versus when you use wheel and you have to use 4 individual one-time spins. Lastly, let's talk about how to plan ahead. These events all have pretty standard schedules, with Egg, Wheel, Hunt for History, and VIP shops having fairly set in stone schedules. The Egg, Wheel, and Hunt for History are typically every few weeks, while VIP shop resets weekly. However, the greater value events, like the seasonal events and More Than Gems, have schedules, but they're not nearly as consistent, and they might be off by a week or 2. So now we'll talk about how to be best prepared for those. First, keeping a gem reserve is absolutely necessary. You should keep around 7 to 14,000 gems in reserve whenever possible. This will make you prepared for the More Than Gems event, for the 7k gem tree event, for the seasonal shop event, which can all pop up sporadically, and be ready to start rolling on any of those on day 1. If you can keep 14,000 gems specifically, or more, that's even better, as then you can do both days of More Than Gems, and then still have a head start on the next one. But in the end, this is the best possible way to ensure you get the best value, because those are the best values. The good news is, once one of these events is over, you'll probably have a month or more to save up and to make up for those spent gems. So if you can stay disciplined and be ready for the next event, you'll be set up from there on out, because you could just save up for the next one after that. And it's just trying to stay disciplined and saving your gems. The other way to be prepared for these events is to hold onto your gem items in item form and not redeem them until you need to use them. And that way you don't have them sitting there ready to be spent. This can be used to deter gem spending if you tend to have a habit of spending gems quickly or impulsively hitting buttons. It could also give you a better idea of what you need to save. For example, if I have 4 2,000 gem items from winning Ark of Osiris matches, you could just hold on to them as your More Than Gems reserve and know that you can't redeem them until More Than Gems comes up. And then even if you do spend all your gems in combat, you have that reserve ready. Lastly, you can stock up on More Than Gems and 7k gem tree by hunting gem nodes at least once a day. Even level 2 nodes, 5 marches without any bonuses, will grant you 100 gems a day and 3,000 a month, which might ease the sting. And at 3 rounds of gem collecting a day, you'll get 9,000 gems a month, which will cover that 7,000 gems for the first day of More Than Gems. Or if you do 4.5 or so, that's when you start getting enough to do both days. But in the end, conservation's the best policy, and although it's difficult, it's worth it to save those gems. But with that, we will wrap up our discussion on gems and gem spending. Of course, due to the sheer amount of talk about gems, and the sheer amount of things you can spend gems on, there are a handful of things that were omitted due to time and them being less significant than the ones I covered in this video. But let me know what you think. Do you have a favorite gem spending event? A favorite item to spend your gems on? Let me know down in the comments. If you want me to cover another topic in Rise of Kingdoms, you can let me know down there as well, as those suggestions can become future video topics. If you want to suggest content outside of the comments section, the Discord is a great place to do that as well, with a link in the description and in the pinned comment. But as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.